Hi, Steve. Good to see you.
Pleasure.
Tell me about Blitz. Why was this the story you wanted to tell now?
I mean, there was a certain kind of wanting to come home. There was some sort of urgency for me. Um, and in some ways, it was to sort of revert back to childhood and to have a situation where I could tell a classical story, but by doing something completely different. I think, to take the tropes of, let's say a Brothers Grimm story, a fairy tale,
Hmm.
Jack and the Beanstalk as such. But at the same time, with classical sort of situations of film, but to say something completely different. Because what was so important about that for me was to sort of give a platform to things which were unseen and that needed to be seen and were true and needed to be told.
Historical accuracy, I know, is so important to you. You certainly did a lot of research on this one.
Yeah, because I knew that question would be asked. Was that true? Did it happen? Oh, really? Well, there were black people, there were Chinese people, there were women. So again, it wasn't about ticking boxes as such.
Mhm.
It was just to set the tone of the landscape. Because when you do the research, you find how rich it is, how interesting it is, and the fact that it's never been given a platform in cinema. I thought, wow, this is amazing. But also, it was in my intention to talk about a certain situation of war and through a child's eyes. That was it. I mean, discovering a photograph and sort of building from there, really.
Have you shared this photograph before? Has anyone seen it?
Yes, I've shared it before. Yes, again, it's one of those things where I was doing this anthology, Small Acts, and in my research for that, I just came across this photograph of this child who's ready to be black child ready to be evacuated. And when I saw that, it was this sweet, beautiful, cute boy, and sort of I felt, okay, I needed to know your story. I need to know who you are, and from that, I sort of built the story around him. And again, it circled that. I mean, from the house that he lived in, that small little nest, going out into the broader, wider world. Yeah.
So, how did you begin to approach that? What was your first step? What did you want to bring to it as a filmmaker?
I mean, I knew that I wanted to make it sort of a visual roller coaster. I knew I wanted to sort of have this sort of odyssey because what's interesting about having him, again, this is interesting in some ways because it's about self-determination.
Hmm.
There was a child who basically his trajectory was mapped out for him. Literally, he was put on the train. You're going there.
Right.
He was told who he was and where he was going, but he defied that. And he defied that by sort of jumping off the train. I don't think it's a spoiler. He changed his narrative. Uh,
Right.
and I think that self determination, taking your life into your own hands, is a huge, huge, huge step. And again, people, like myself, sometimes also your life or who people think you is projected onto you, and somehow by taking your life in your own hands is very important to grow to sort of have ownership. Not knowing what's going to happen. I mean, when he jumped, he didn't know how he was going to land, and that's it.
So, where did you start first? Was it about the script? Was it about the casting?
The story, the script. Because again, making when I saw that photograph of that boy, okay, who's his parents, where does he live, what's the circumstance of his existence, where is he going, and then it sort of spiraled out from there. Again, what for me in this whole sort of venture, what was important was love. You know, sort of investing in that, again, it's the only thing worth living for, and thing worth dying for. And I mean that in a sense where if I had the foundation of that love between the mother and her son, I knew I had a movie. And
Hmm.
that was it. So again, once the script was out of the way, I had to find the kid and find the mother. And Saoirse was extraordinary, of course, and she was an amazing agent because he found the script somehow. She wasn't in my mind right then at that moment. It was just developing, and then getting her on board and finding out that she can sing, and we could talk about that later. And
Right.
then finding Elliot, again, that was a magical moment because again, when you write the script, you think, okay, oh my God, does he
I know
exist?
you set yourself up for that one. How are you ever going to find Elliot?
Does George exist? And thank God
Exactly.
he did. And Elliot, there was just a stillness in this kid. His face was just so fascinating. He was so still, and his eyes were so expressionate. He was like a silent movie star, and I knew
Hmm.
that was him. That was the kid.
He really is magical in the role.
Mm, mm. And
I
I
mean,
think, sorry, please go on.
go ahead.
So I think also when Saoirse met George, she immediately took him under her wing. I mean, she was 9 years old when she started to act. George
Hmm.
was nine when he was eight when he got the role, nine when he started to shoot, and that sort of instinct of protection, and that it was reciprocated from George to Saoirse. There became this real close friendship. The bond and love and the respect and the admiration was there for each other, and they, that's real on what you see on the film is real. That kind of real mutual sort of appreciation. And once I had that, that was the thing that gave me the biggest anxiety. It wasn't the big set pieces, it wasn't all that kind of stuff. That for me, that's not an issue. Once I had that foundation, well, then you're off to the races.
For sure, because you need them to establish that chemistry because when the film they're so much apart. So you have to believe that they're the two magnets that need to get back together
Exactly,
to
precisely,
take you through the film.
exactly, precisely, absolutely.
So tell me about Saoirse. So she got cast because her agent found the script.
Yeah, well, that was it. Really, she's got a very
Amazing.
well, yeah, exactly. Well, she listened and now, oh, Saoirse. I said, oh, wow, okay, yeah, that would be a great idea. And again, she was, don't get me wrong, she was on my mind, but proactive. And then she was in Australia, and I had a phone call with her, and we spoke a lot about the script and how she had a real closeness with her mother too. There was a real bond with her mother. It was her and they were like, of course, his mother and daughter, but also very much like friends. She understood that connection, which was very, very good in the sense of understanding who Rita was and George was. And then, of course, the big question was, could she sing? Because that was a big remit. Could she sing? And she told me at the time, I could hold a tune. I thought, what does that mean?
That's dangerous.
Exactly. And then what happened was that we got a singing coach for her in Australia because I think she was shooting a movie down there. And I never forget that phone call from the singing coach when she rang me to say, she said to me, she could not only sing, but it's only going to get better. And there was a big laugh and a big smile on the phone. A big, I thought I saw heard a smile on the phone. It was fantastic. It was wonderful. So that was great.
It's also quite a song that you wrote. What inspired that song for you?
Well, yes, it was a song I wrote with Nicholas Brutel. It's called Winter's Coat, and it's based on when my father died 18 years ago. He left me. He left. I got his winter coat, and I said, and it was about the whole idea of putting on that kind of that coat, and you're feeling a hug, an embrace, in the sort of the warmth of within the absence that there's a presence within that on your body, and also the smell. So I think anyone could understand that kind of tactile sort of embrace of someone. So I thought that was a good starting point for a song again. And then when Serge is singing it to all of these women in the factory, of course they're thinking about their loved ones, they're thinking about their brothers or their husbands or their whoever, uncles and so forth, who are off at war.
We should talk too about your heads of department. How did you decide to pull your crew together? It seems like it's a mix of people you've worked with before and then some new faces to your team.
Yeah, I mean, there's Eric Rousseau, the DP, the French DP. I mean, I saw his work with Olivier Assayas, a director, and I always liked his work, always interested in his work. He's always had one eye on his work. And finally, we got a chance to work together on Blitz. I mean, he's a great DP, very fluid. He's again, there's a certain kind of, I mean, his lighting is fantastic. I mean, I like my frames. I like to put my frames together with him, but his lighting is extraordinary. So that was very interesting as far as working with him in that collaboration and thinking on his feet. There's Adam Stockhausen, is extraordinary. And we've been working together for 12 years. And again, it's interesting because again, with Adam, it is about the person and the personality of something. And we're talking about London post industrial revolution, so we're still living in the past. And I never forget when my parents came to London very early on in the late 50s, early 60s, and there were people standing in front of buses with white flags because of the smog. So it was that, even we talked to Adam about the dust particles. And again, him making the Cafe de Paris, him making the subway station was flooded, but also
Right.
how you destroy that is as
Heartbreaking.
is as complicated and precise as how you would build it. So
Right.
he's fantastic. And also Adam Somna, who's extraordinary first AD. I mean, he's the George Harrison of the film world. I mean, you see what his credits, and he's always been, he's worked with Scorsese, he's worked with Steven Spielberg, he's worked with P.T. Anderson. I remember when I met him for the first time like 10 years ago in an airport. He came towards me and said he would love to work with me. And he's British as well. So again, he's invested. He's the invested sort of interest in this particular period. So yeah, it was wonderful. What a wonderful team, and of course, Jasmin Duran, the costume designer.
And you've worked with Saoirse before also, right?
Worked with Saoirse since she was small. I think maybe she worked with them on a tournament when she was 9 years old. So she's seen her sort of her career sort of take off. So again, I always think that costume designers are the most experienced people on set. I mean, I was very lucky to work with Patty Norris. I mean, she's a legend. I mean, I love Patty. And I learned a lot from her as a filmmaker. And I think Jacqueline is a similar person in the way of sort of sharing her experiences. Again, it was a wonderful, wonderful team. I could go on and on and on and on.
For sure. I always hate the expression that London is another character in the film, but in this case, I feel like it's really true. Like the idea that London is such an important factor in this film.
Yeah.
How did you decide what you were going to build, what you were going to recreate, and what already existed for you?
I mean, again, the Cafe de Paris for me was pinnacle. I mean, that was, again, I needed to have that scene in the picture because, it shows, again, the decadence. It shows a sort of, people living the life of Riley while other people are sort of, living off rations, just trying to get by. And again, that's very much to do with the class system in the UK. So that had to be sort of looked at in the sense where, and also the aftermath of the sort of criminal gang sort of robbing from the dead, because that actually happened. And then, the song in that scene, "Oh Johnny," this woman sort of singing basically about an orgasm. Mm-hmm. At that moment, the bomb hit. That was the actual song that was being sung when the bomb hit. So right. All of those details and the band, the band leader was named called Snakehip Johnson, an openly gay black man who was living with this very, very, very well-to-do white guy. He was there. So again, it's this London which often people don't know about, but it existed. And I needed that to be visualized. The tube station, I mean, that was a sort of engineering feat. Again, the destroy the tube station, when everybody thinks that, people were, officially allowed to sort of sleep in the underground. No, people had to fight their way to get in the underground. Apparently Churchill said he didn't want people to cower. So he closed the underground. I mean, how people knew about the underground was because the people who fought against Franco, the socialists who came over from London, from UK rather, all over the UK, mm-hmm. went to Madrid to fight the fascists. They knew about hiding in the subway. So that's the first place they went. And, the communities had to sort of break the law to get in there. And then afterwards, of course, the officials allowed people just to hide in the underground, but it was never a given. That had to be made. And of course, making that the safest place in the movie, at the beginning, you have to go in the underground. And then, of course, with the disaster, the flood that happens there, hopefully that's not a spoiler for anyone, that gives you more anxiety because you've been told this is the most safest place to be. So these were essential. Those were pretty important to me.
What were the biggest challenges you faced in making the film?
The biggest challenges, I just had so much fun in making this film, so much joy making this film. I mean, my family of immigrants, I know what work is. There's no challenge. There's all privilege. And therefore, again, it's just get up in the morning doing what I love. It's never a chore. It's a privilege. And I don't mean it. I don't have rose tinted glasses on. It's just I know what work is, and what I do is I work very hard, but this isn't work.
What surprised you the most when you were doing your research?
I think, surprise me. It doesn't surprise me, but I'll just say how people left out of history. Mm-hmm. I mean, Mickey Davies, the small gentleman who, he was one of the architects of NHS. How do we not know him? Mm-hmm. Women who worked at ammunition factories. I mean, you have the backbone of the country. You have women who are the emotional and physical backbone of the country, They're looking after their elderly parents,
Hmm.
evacuating their children. They're working in ammunition factories, working in aircraft hangars to supply the weapons to the front. And they're totally erased from history
Hmm.
in film. And the only time you ever actually see a woman in a movie, as far as the film, maybe she's a telephone operator, or
Right.
she's a weeping wife, or she's sort of a person that someone's having sex with, or she's handing them a cup of tea. So the fact that, again, that these people have been left out of the narrative is crazy. And I'm just so grateful that we could put them back in the right position they are, because it's not a I'm not ticking boxes here. I'm just telling the truth. People like Ife, the
Right.
era, what the images. Listen, using conventional tools to say something completely different.
It really was
No,
amazing to
I
me.
mean, no one's ever seen those images. No one's ever seen these images before.
Mhm.
Even the fire hose,
Right.
researching the firemen and the equipment they use and how inefficient it was. I mean,
Hmm.
the hoses were made out of canvas. They were leaking. The water pressure, sometimes you couldn't control the water pressure. They would, again, like it, spitting serpents. These are, again, these kind of things where we're not only fighting our enemy, our common enemy, but we're fighting ourselves. This is very, very important. Again, to putting a narrative which is very kind of you know how can I say, to look at a narrative which is total contrary to what we've seen.
I was thinking as I was watching it, I've seen countless war movies, countless movies set in London, countless movies set in World War II. Yet throughout the entire film, I'm thinking, well, I haven't seen a single soldier, and everything I was experiencing felt new and a surprise, and I was taking something new away from it, to all the points that you just made. Learning, seeing it from a child's eyes, from a woman's perspective, from the Black perspective, you brought a new point of view to stories that we feel like we've been told a million times already.
No, I mean, interesting enough, at the New York premiere, which you cut the atmosphere of the night, there was a gentleman afterwards who was a Chinese gentleman who approached me, and he said, I remember, hiding, sheltering in the underground. I was 3 years old. My father had a Chinese restaurant, and I remember that vividly. I said, "Oh well, I'm so happy you've been seen." So yes, thank you for allowing me to be seen. It's
Mhm.
important, because it's important because these stories are should be told in a way that they were, rather than what people want them to be. And it's just, look, I'm not interested in just sort of, there are Chinese people, there are black people, there are brown people, there are women. That's there's Mickey Davis, is it? That's not interesting. Just because it's so dynamic,
Mhm.
it's so kind of exciting, so kind of alive. Those nightclubs which were there. I mean, there were three. The Don Mar Theatre, which is off Seven Dials. I made certain people know that there were three black nightclubs. The sort of texture, which are so dynamic. So when you have George, this little black boy going through the narrative and coming across these criminals. I mean, there's again, it's not Dickens. It's a black boy. He's not Oliver Twist.
Right.
He's George Henway. How people see Oliver is very different how they see George. How George sees the world is very different to how Oliver sees the world. It's a kind of like, no one would sort of make me look like sort of excuse me, what am I saying? No one would mistake me for sort of Prince Harry, would they? So it's, you have to look at something from the perspective of that person. You can't put a paintbrush over all of us. And unfortunately, I wish you could, but unfortunately, that's not the case. I'm living it.
As we all are. Thank
Mm.
you so much, Steve. I really appreciate the time. Good to catch up with you.
Pleasure. Take care. Bye bye.